This video is sponsored by the New Classic Film Web Shop, the best place to shop for all your favorite film stocks.
Y'all remember like 2 to 3 years ago when everybody was talking about the RZ67? I was always confused because I get it, this camera's professional and it's great, but this is a big ass brick. I don't know why anybody would really want to carry this around. And after using it now for the first time, I think I was right. I do not like this camera and I definitely didn't enjoy using it. So what do I hate the most about the camera is honestly this right here, the bellows focusing. This is a great tool. Before I tell you why I don't like it, know that this is a great tool because it gives you the ability to close focus. That is extremely underrated, especially when it comes to shooting medium format, because a lot of these other medium format cameras, you cannot do this, and therefore you will have a minimum focusing distance to deal with. But here, the more you extend, the closer you can get. Of course, you have to compensate a bit for the light depending on how far, and of course, the depth of field becomes razor thin. But still, it's a creative option that you can use, and I really enjoy using it myself. Or at least I enjoyed the results I got, not really the using part. The main reason I didn't enjoy using it is because once you extend these bellows, it kind of changes how you have to hold the camera. Camera becomes super front heavy here, and there's no real way to support it. I feel weird kind of holding the camera by the bellows and using that to support it, so I try not to do that. And instead, I continue to hold the camera from the sides like this. And that just makes the camera a big pain in the ass because then it's super front heavy. And that starts to affect how steady you can be with the camera. And, then your muscles are working to keep things steady. And it just adds a little bit of challenge. When shooting with flash, I guess it doesn't matter that much because the flash freezes your image. But if you're not shooting with flash, if you're outside, for example, in daylight, that's going to affect your image. And you're going to get potentially some motion blur because of it. You do have this knob right here to tighten this. And therefore, this won't move. And I didn't realize that at first, and I wasn't using it. And therefore, whenever I would tilt the camera up to get the shot facing upwards, I would feel this move. And the weight, especially on the other lens, this big one that I have right here, the weight of this lens was enough to make the bellows go downwards when pointing the camera up. So I wish I had realized that I have this right here to lock it in place, and that solves for that. So I'm not going to knock it for that. Okay, hold on a second. Before I continue bad-mouthing this camera, let's actually go ahead and take a look at some of the images I created when I used this for the first time. I really like the images, and I'm pretty happy with the outcome, but this camera just ain't it. All right, let's go check those out.
I wrote this record while 30,000 feet in the air. Steward is complimenting me on my nappy hair. If I can fuck her in front of all of these passengers, they'll probably think I'm a terrorist. Eat my asparagus, then I'm asking her thoughts of a young nigga. Fast money and freedom, a crash dummy for dollars. I know you dying to meet him, I'll probably die in a minute. Just bury me with 20 bitches, 20 million in the countdown fitted. Hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up, hold up. Hold up, hold up, hold up. Yeah, big shit poppin'. Section 80. Back in this bitch, in the back of that bitch with my back against the wall and your bitch on the edge of my dick. Jump off. I call a bitch, a hoe, a woman. I never did nothing but break the ground on top of the asphalt. Tire mark gave you evidence that I'm easily pedaling with the speed of a lightning bolt. As a kid, I killed 2 adults. I'm too advanced. I lived my 20s at 2 years old. The wiser man. Truth be told, I'm like 87.
What up? I'm at PhotoCare right now, and I just want to thank the team here for loaning me that giant RZ. Say hello.
Hey Eric, how's it going?
I'm good, I'm good. Tell me a bit about this. I hear this camera is very popular nowadays.
Well, it is. It's one of the best medium format cameras that's still around. 6x7 centimeter negative gives you a really big piece of film.
Yeah.
And a lot of information, a lot of detail. Full line of lenses still available for this camera, even though it's been out of production for a long time.
Yeah.
And like a lot of things in film, there's a big resurgence
Yeah.
in this style of camera, and this camera in particular.
Interesting. I'm surprised because that thing is giant.
It is. It's a big one, but the negative space or the negative size is what really sets it apart from other film cameras these days. So even back in the day when it was the go-to camera for, name the big fashion photographer in the 80s and 90s and early 2000s, this was the camera. The most popular medium format. So every big name from that era was using this camera.
Awesome. So. Well, as always, thank you for the support. I appreciate you lending me that camera.
Not a problem, anytime.
All right. So I'm going to stop talking smack about this camera because it deserves a lot of respect. It does a couple key things very, very well. As I mentioned earlier, this camera is all about studio use. And there's a couple key reasons why. The first and foremost reason is that this camera uses leaf shutter lenses. So the shutter is actually built into the lens and not into the camera. There is a mirror in here that slaps up and down, but the actual lens control and the shutter is directly in there. And therefore you plug your flash directly into the lens and you can sync your flash at every single speed. 1/500th of a second all the way to the slower speeds, the usual 1/30th, 1/15th, that kind of stuff. And that's extremely powerful and useful because on a pentax 67, for example, you can't do that. You can't shoot with the flash, I think above like 1/60th of a second or something relatively miserable, depending on what you're doing. But that is a huge asset for people that are in the studio. The other thing, as I said earlier, is the rotating backs. Theoretically, the more backs you have, the more options you can have when shooting. So instead of having to wait till the end of a roll to then switch, you can just mix and match as you shoot and kind of keep the momentum of your shoot going. And then, of course, is that giant 6.7 negative. This isn't the only camera that shoots 6.7, of course. There's a bunch of other options out there. But for a studio photographer, this is probably the best 6.7 option. I think if you're doing anything that is outside of the studio, I think that's where this camera becomes kind of useless. And I don't mean that to be harsh, but what it does is just not that much better when you're out doing landscapes. Any other camera can do what this does for a landscape. You don't need flash when you're shooting landscapes. All you need is a good lens and, you know, a big negative. And there's plenty of cameras out there that have that. Some are expensive, you know, like the Mamiya 7 and stuff like that. But then others are cheaper, such as folding cameras, for example. They're really cheap, older ones, like the Agfa cameras, a lot of the Zeiss Icon cameras. The lenses there are capable. They might not be as good as this, because this is very premium, kind of top of the line, more modern. But those cameras still do very well. So in my eyes, it's more about the convenience, you know, having the ability to create big negative images without having to carry this giant bulky thing. That's just my thought. I guess if you're hiking for the day, you don't mind having this in your bag, then why not? You know, I guess you can carry it, no big deal. But if you're doing some long camping, if you're doing some long hikes, if you're summiting a mountain or something, you'd probably rather carry the weight of this in water than in this camera. Outside of the studio, I just don't really see the point of this camera. And I feel like a lot of people that buy this camera are shooting outside of the studio, whether on a hike or I guess you can do portraits with this outside and the camera still retains its value. But it's mostly because of these lenses, because these lenses are amazing. This one right here is the 110mm 2.8. So just think about what that means on a 6.7 negative. An aperture of 2.8 for a lens that's creating that big of a image circle to kind of show that on a 6.7 negative, that's going to give you incredible bokeh. And the depth of field is going to be very, very thin, and you're just going to get amazing separation with that really kind of wide-looking perspective that is classic for medium format. I think the only kind of lens that competes with this is, of course, that Pentax 67, the 105 2.4. Those go neck and neck. I don't know which one's better or worse, but they both produce incredibly interesting images that give you kind of a 4x5 look on medium format. So the lenses are the reason why you would buy this camera. And being a studio camera, there's a lot of different lens options for this, each kind of having their own purpose. This is the wider lens, which I actually had, you know, some fun using, especially for the results that I got. But this lens is very heavy, and it's very front heavy too. It just made using this camera like just not fun. Definitely less fun messing with this one than with the smaller lens. So yeah, that's what I got to say about this camera. I won't be renting it again, but it is an awesome camera. And as I said, if you're in the studio, definitely consider this. If you're going to go hiking or shoot portraits outside, honestly, I'd tell you to use basically any other camera. Medium format comes in a lot of different flavors, and there's definitely a flavor for kind of each scenario. All right, that's the video for today. If you enjoyed it, please click that like button down below to help get this video spread out. And of course, if you haven't subscribed yet, go ahead and subscribe. What are you waiting for? All right, y'all, to the next one. I'm out.